All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. We have our great partners at Brockton Public Schools joining us, the Edcite team, to talk about leveraging data to inform district decisions. We are going to start today with some basic introductions before diving into how Brockton is using data to really have a positive impact on students. So I'll kick this off. My name is Julia Sweeney. I am the Director of Sales at Edcite, and I've been with the team for about 10 years. Very exciting. And I love working with schools and districts around the country and globe on how to use assessments and analytics to really positively impact student outcomes. And I'll turn it over to Brian.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Brian McIntosh. I also work on the Edcite team. I'm our Director of Product, and before that, I was a high school math teacher. I also work really closely with the Brockton team, so excited to be here today. And I'll turn it over to Ethan from the Brockton team.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ethan Cancell. I'm the Director of Research, Assessment, and Accountability. And we've been using Edcite to help us get data in front of people so that they can use it to make good data-informed decisions as opposed to whimsy, or their gut feelings. We've been working, as Brian said, very closely with Edcite. We started on the Edcite side for our assessments, and then we shifted to the Data Hub, and we really value the partnership that we've had with Edcite. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, who is the architect of most of our visualizations, Sandino dos Santos.
Hi, I'm Sandino dos Santos. I'm the data specialist over at Brockton Public Schools, and I work on most of the dashboards. I make Ethan's dreams and realities come true through dashboards.
And when I win the Powerball, I will say that you've accomplished.
Yeah, no, Sandino is absolutely an expert in Data Hub, probably more so than anyone I've ever worked with that's not on the Edcite team. Ethan, you as well. Yeah, but I know Sandino's in there every day, making sure you guys get the data that you need. So I know we really wanted to, after just a basic introduction of ourselves, just talk about why this is such an important topic. And I know, Ethan, you've shared with us before, and maybe you can share with everyone tuning in, just why this is such an important priority for your team and how you're tackling it.
All right, sure, Julia. It's really important to us, as I kind of hinted in the introduction. We want people to make good decisions, and our department's job is to get information in front of people so that they can make good decisions. People in schools make decisions on many, many bases, but we want it to be, where possible, empirical and verifiable and, out there in the open. So what we do is we create these dashboards. And so we want to put, and this is the strength of Data Hub, we want to have a lot of things in one place, a lot of data elements in one place. So for example, we have what we call our leadership dashboard. And we have our state tests, so our MCAS and our WIDA access scores. We put in our Edcite unit test assessments. We put in our external benchmarks such as Lexia or STAR that Renaissance creates, Mathia, whatever we put in there. We put in other data sets as well, like our attendance and our discipline. So when you have all of these data sets together in one place, you can look at them and say, oh, our scores are down from last year. Look at that. Our attendance is terrible. Do you think there might be a connection between kids not showing up and our scores going down? That actually was a real live I'm joking about, but post-pandemic, anyone who lived through the pandemic, we had, high mortality rates in Brockton. It was tragic. It was tough getting kids back to school. And so one of our focuses this year was last year, was to really reduce our chronic absenteeism. And in some schools, for some groups of kids, it was over 50%. Well, we could track that very closely because we had an attendance dashboard. It was built into the leadership dashboard, but you could track attendance data. And lo and behold, on average, schools that really did a good job of reducing the chronic absenteeism, they also increased the MCAS scores. There were lots of other good effects as well, but that was something out there. So that's the sort of thing that we try to do. And the great thing, as I mentioned earlier, with Edcite and the Edcite Data Hub, the way I think of it is Edcite allows you basically as much freedom as you want. It's basically, it does not constrain you. If you have the will and the skill, you can build it. And if you don't have it, Brian's going to help you. So we're able to build whatever we want, and we're able to put all these different sets together. And we're lucky to have someone with Sandino's talents to make these things happen. So if we could demo for you just what our leadership dashboard looks for. And while he's getting ready to pull that up, I'm going to tell everyone out there that in the first year, last year, which wasn't truly our first year, but it was our big push of the year, we wanted to focus for administrators. And then for this year, which we haven't done yet, but we're in the process of, we're going to really focus on school level. So teacher, classroom level dashboard. So all of our teachers will have it, and we do our training, and it's great. But so this is the leadership dashboard, and you see as you go across the top, you see that there's a tab structure. Access is we to access, MCAS is our state test. And then you start to get into, because we have these different tabs, which we don't have to get to right now, but you have the academics elementary, and you're going to see how we start stitching things together. And you see the budget piece, the climate and culture, and the vocal. One of the nice things about using Edcite is it's really easy to make sure that the people get the data that they have the right to see, or the rights to see, and no more. So our student data privacy is taken care of. That was a headache that we don't have to deal with now. Edcite handles that for us, and we're very, very happy with it. It's easy to manage. But you can see different types of dashboards. This is what the state, basically, we're mirroring what the state do. They give you the distributions up top. So, that's the students who are not meeting, partially meeting or exceeding expectations. Those are all state terms. Below it, you'll see the growth percentiles. ELA is ESGP, math is math. And then as you scroll down, you see the scaled scores. I point these out because we want to make sure that our data sets look like the states, and also we're measuring what the state accountability system is measuring. So any district administrator can say, oh, gee, this is how we did this year versus the other year. All right, so we don't need to go into an in-depth level. It also has science. Let's just take a look at the elementary academics tab. Again, this is just to give you a quick flavor of the sorts of things that we put in here, the data sets that we put in here.
Yeah,
One
this is really great.
One of the key things that we do is we make sure that we put in all the different, in our state, we call them student-specific groups. If we were talking math, we'd call them subgroups. But we want to make sure that we have all the different demographic slices so we can take a look. Okay, this might be our data for now, but let's take a look at it with students with disabilities. And it's as easy as pulling this down. We could say, well, how about the students who are not disabilities, but are English learners, or are students with disabilities, and English learners. So you can slice these in all the different ways that you want. You can look at we used to call it economic disadvantage. Now we're back to calling it low income. But are you low income? You can add all of these different filters. And when you're looking for disproportionality, which is a really big deal in our district, these filters allow you to do it. And the great thing about the filters, if they're on the top, they are controlling the entire dashboard. If you look on the visual on the right, the top right, you see that you have little filters built in that will only affect this particular visualization. So if we want to look at star reading, for example, and we want to look at the fall last year. So it's when, you walk in. This is what we walked into post-pandemic. And this is, when you're on the cabinet or the leadership team of the district, you can take a look and say, this is the challenge that we have. This is where our kids are at the start of the fall. So I think that this sort of information is great. But as we scroll down the page, you can see the other. Now, we have these Lexia Core 5 things that are not showing up. Maybe if we have a different year, we'll be able to see it. But there you go. Lexia is a big push for our elementaries. And so we want to show people this is where it makes a lot more sense later in the year, but this is where you started and this is where you are now. You can take a look at the speedometer. As I said, you can build any kind of chart you want in Edcite. You're not limited. We have Lexia English. We have a large English learner population. So there are all kinds of great things. You can see the amount of minutes. You can check it later. You can see, you look at the levels. So we want to make sure that when we're meeting with schools and when schools, the principals and the literacy specialists are meeting with teachers, they want to take a look at the minutes. They want to make sure that the minutes make sense. You might say, wow, these Lexia English minutes, everyone should be in the dark green. Maybe, but not necessarily, because we also want to push kids to regular Lexia, not Lexia English. So you really can have these in-depth conversations. Okay, enough of that. Let's see.
And Ethan, maybe it's so helpful just to see how much you guys are doing in Brockton in terms of looking at the data, using it to inform your decisions, because there is so much that you could look at and you could be making decisions about. How do you prioritize or sift through the sheer amount to say, you know what, this is what I'm going to talk to the principal about next week, or this is going to be the focus of a dashboard?
That's a really, really good question. And we answer that in a sort of tongue-in-cheek way. Well, Sandino and I spend a lot of time analyzing the data that you don't see in a dashboard. So we're going to take a look and we're going to do some, relatively fancy analyses, and we're going to see what have the largest effects. And so, for example, we're going to take a look, and we saw these absentee rates, and we saw the correlations between attendance and certain scores. And we find that our unit tests are pretty good predictors. And there's certain things that we have that are very good predictors. There's certain things we have that are not very good predictors. So we go through all these things and we take a look at them. One of the things that we saw in the past, which is under climate and culture, we were looking at suspensions. If your suspensions are through the roof, you're not in school. So if your suspensions are through the roof, but they're all happening at a certain time, this is a real live example. Brockton High is about 4,000 kids. Sandino is a proud alum of Brockton High. A lot of our leadership in our district have been through the district and have graduated from Brockton High School. When you have that many students in a small place, you can have bottlenecks. And when you have bottlenecks, you can have kids who are late to class, and you can have discipline problems. People are rubbing up against each other. Okay. So we noticed by looking at when the events are happening, which is all in our data, and where the events are happening, we realized, wow, we don't really want our students to have lockers because they're carrying book bags and they're carrying a tablet in the book bag. They no longer have to have all these books. So let's get rid of the lockers. And if we clear out the lockers, there's a lot more space for the kids to move around. And wouldn't you know, and if we put more adults in that area, wouldn't you know, fewer kids are late to class, and there are far fewer incidents that are happening because of the bouncing around, just bumping into each other. And so that's an example of how Sandino and I take a look at the data. We show this data to the administrators, and school people are smart. They will solve problems if you put the data in front of them and if you make it easy. What we tend to do, and I'm going to take full blame for this, people in my position, people who deal with data all day long, they love the way that, give Brian a good database and he's happy. But when you're in a school, that doesn't work. You want something that you can see that's easy. You don't have to be technical to get access to it. So that's a real live example at Brockton High. Just looking at the data we have, how did we know that that's something to look at? Well, because Sandino and I are paying attention to the data. And what we like most of all, when you start putting this data out in front of people, you start to have principals coming to you saying, hey, I've been looking at my data. Could I see this? This is really important to me. And so that is how you're going to answer the question. Because when you get the data in front of people, get it in a form that they can take a look at, they start using it, they start slicing it. We find all kinds of interesting patterns. In our chronic absenteeism, we had double-digit declines in students who are chronically absent. That's fantastic. In Massachusetts, for those of you who are not from Massachusetts, we lead the nation. This is a mark of shame, by the way, in the Black-White achievement gap with MCAS. Okay, that's just a fact. In Brockton, we've been working on reducing the achievement gap like all districts. Wouldn't you know that with the chronically absent, the kids, they improve, but they are lagging our white group of students. They improve, but not nearly as much as the others, and their absolute chronic absenteeism rates are higher. That tells us we have work to do in an area that it's not what people are expecting. That's not the narrative you hear that the state is pushing all the time. The state's pushing the achievement gap, and we're saying, yeah, if we get in front of this chronic absenteeism for the white students, we can help that group who is struggling right now. Because if you're not attending, you tend not to do well. And so that's a way that we use our data. We look at these things, we find that's how you prioritize.
Well, I really appreciate the level that you guys are really providing the example of, like, get into subgroups, get into the different aspects of data. Yeah. And something we've talked about, and, for those who are tuning in, at Edcite, we always talk about how data doesn't do the action. Data is not going to create the change. Yep. Data will inform the experts, which are the administrators, the teachers, all of our, the Brockton Public Schools team is informed by the data, but ultimately it's the educators that change the outcomes. It's removing the lockers, it's changing a curriculum decision. I really like the fact that you said, you guys are the experts, because that is the whole purpose of even having these dashboards, is to allow you to do what you do best, faster, and at scale. So I love this. Yeah. And Sandino, I muted everyone at the one point, so I wanted to make sure you knew to unmute, because I turned everyone on mute besides Ethan at one point, and I felt a little bad. So feel free to come off mute if you to add in, because I know you're building a lot of these drop downs and different things. So if you have anything else that you want to highlight before we transition maybe to some of those teacher dashboard pushes you're doing this year. And
Yeah, I think most like Ethan said before, the most crucial part of the work that me and Ethan does, for example, it saves them a lot of time. Most of the times in our SIS, which is our Student Information Center, the data is actually like dispersed, so you can look at one student at a time. But once you aggregate it and then show it to someone, for example, I'll show you the example that Ethan was talking about. It's called our discipline dashboard. And in our discipline dashboard, you can actually track the location that things happen, for example, on campus. And if you drill down to it, it would actually tell you where exactly on campus happened, stairs, hallways, and then you can deploy resources to actually solve that issue. Another thing that we also build within the dashboard, or it's on the right side, we actually create a small summary for someone who is seeing this for the first time. They're like, oh, like, what am I actually looking at and how should I read it? And right under here, we provide a video that actually explains how to use the dashboard. And this actually will help like a leader who is seeing this for the first time to actually get acclimated and very used to actually, okay, cool, this is how I should properly use this dashboard.
That's awesome. It's like giving the support with the data. So you're not just giving data to people and expecting them to figure it out.
Yeah, and Sandino makes a really good point, and that's why, I think we're so lucky. I'll make a lot of those videos. Sandino will edit them up, and we have office hours. We walk people through, and the point is, you never want people to feel badly about not knowing how to get access to their data or how to use their data. And there are people who, because they're in education, they're just really responsible people. They don't want to misuse the data. They don't want to break something. And so, there is a lot. What you talk about, we used to say in central Pennsylvania, you can weigh the hog, but you can weigh the hog all day. It's not fattening the hog. You want to fatten the hog, you got to change the hog's diet. And so we spend a lot of time, yes, making the dashboard, analyzing the data to make the dashboard, but then you have to spend a lot of time in how are you going to not just use it, but what are you going to do with it? And what I find is that there is absolutely no shortage of really, really smart people with excellent and creative solutions when you start them in this sort of process, your basic inquiry process, and you put the data in front of them, you have a protocol, they go through it, and then, it just leads to improve student outcomes. And that's really what we want. At a district level, you want to make smart decisions about how you're deploying your resources. And so one of the things that because people know that I'm just going to call it like I see it, they're going to say, hey, we're spending all this money on XYZ resources. Is it worth it? Well, one of the things that we worked with Brian on creating, yes, we can do fancy regression analyses, but that's not really all that helpful for people. It's not very intuitive. Well, we just created these scatter plots that show here's one thing, here's the other thing, and it has a line that will show you the line of best fit. And it's like, yes, there seems to be a very strong association between the more, of this you get, the better outcome on something important like STAR or MCAS. And I say STAR is important because it's such a good predictor of MCAS. So you can see, but equally on the other side, you'll see there are kids who spend a lot of time on some products and it doesn't yield these results. And so then that gives you all sorts of questions like, okay, is it that we're not implementing it with fidelity? Every vendor you ever talk to will tell you that. In some cases, that is the issue. In other cases, it's a dosage issue, that the kids just aren't on the product long enough. In other cases, the teachers don't know how to support that product. So I don't want to actually name the vendors, because I've said Star a couple times that they don't pay me. I wish they did, but but the point is, we can be agnostic from Sandino, and I can be agnostic from our viewpoint. We're looking at the data, and now we can create something that's really easy to understand.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
maybe before, oh, Brian, go ahead.
I was just going to add, I think something else that has just been really, really wonderful for me to get to watch in my, in our meetings and seeing this evolve over time in Brockton has been that, when you give people a tool, especially when you put the work in like you guys did to, kind of select data that's really relevant for the right people, they start to ask for, additional tools or additional things. So do you guys have any examples of, things that have come up after you started sharing this tool? Have there been requests from, teachers or school admins in Brockton for more tools or other things? And I know Sandino's added some stuff for people based on their requests. So has that come up at all?
Yes, some of these scatter plots that you see were exactly from that. It's how good of a job do we see? How tight of a relationship is there between this product and that product? That's what people always want to answer. And as a social scientist, you're like, come on, guys, there's a lot going on. It's not, there are a lot of things you can't control. You've got all these kids with their personal context. You've got all these teachers with their personal context. But when you're a decent sized district like we are, you can say, well, on average, you can see blah, blah, blah. And that's something that school committee, what we call school committee, everyone else calls school board, what school committee members appreciate. And if you're a finance guy, if you're the superintendent, you can go and say, we've done our due diligence. These are the results we're seeing. Or if you're on the other side of that and you're getting rid of a program that's, well established and well liked and has its supporters, you have reasons why you're doing it. The item analysis, which is MCAS, you'll hear school-based people say all the time, and I agree with them, it's an autopsy. It's looking back at last year's, it's a summative assessment. What can we do about it? Well, the item analysis is something that allows you to go more deeply into the questions. Since half of the questions roughly are released, you actually will have the full question. You helped us with the item analysis, Brian, so you know about that. And that was something that came from popular demand from the schools. What are some other, Sandino? We get them all the time, and
I'd give more credit to Sandino for that one, because he's the one that built a system where you guys come back this school year and people now have item analysis for last year's MCAS, spring to fall, so pretty much as quick as you're getting it back. So
yeah, and I should add to that, Sandino made it so that you can see at the kid level.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it, the school level, the grade level, class level, or the kid level. So, and everyone's going to get the right permissions. So rather than, what we used to have to do, which involved Excel spreadsheets and, putting them in secure folders and all that, nope. It's really, really easy thanks to what Sandino built.
Mm-hmm. And one of the requests that actually came on as an add-on to that is in the item analysis, they'll actually tag a standard for the state. And the math department actually will have these unit tests that they give out periodically. And one of the things that they asked us to work on is to actually match the unit test to the standard. So you can actually track, for example, item 1, it was covered in this specific unit assessment. Item 2 was covered in this other one. And then you can track different ways that you can either teach that specific item or enhance your actual, like, bring in new curriculum or some like a different way to actually teach students, and that could be more useful.
It was really important to our math department. Again, this is where Julia was talking about how you're using the data and actually doing something with it as a result of it. So the math department came to us and said, can you do this? Because in some cases, when you don't do well, the first thing is say, well, our curriculum doesn't cover it. No, our curriculum covers it. We can show you exactly where on the map it covers it. And we can show you on the unit test the questions that covered it. Mm-hmm. And so, as Sandino was saying, if you're not successful as a teacher with that, what is it? Because if we covered it and you think that your kids knew it, why is that not showing up? And so you can get it at that level. And, to me, it's quite a fine thing if a person says we never covered it. And yet, it's part of your curriculum. That might be the problem. But that's a level, Brian, that we get to thanks to a request coming from the field or, our colleagues in teaching and learning.
Yeah.
And I think, it really, if people want to call it an autopsy, I think that kind of brings it back to life, right? Because you're now connecting, okay, this is last year's data, but here are the unit tests that we give on Edcite, and here's exactly when we're assessing this and how we're assessing it. So it really connects what is last year's data to, what we're doing in teaching and instruction this year.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because the state has been really trying to get our data back to us faster. And with an item analysis, we're going to get that well before we get any scaled scores or anything like that. So we can use this data over the summertime to revamp our curriculum, perhaps, to revamp our maps of how, our scope and sequence. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do. You don't get the official results. We just got them. They just were released this week. So, the school year's already started. So this is how you use MCAS data effectively for planning, even though the state doesn't release the official final data till the end, but they do give you bits and pieces. And obviously we have to pay attention to accountability and things like that. But for us to use it in a more formative way, this is how we use it. And this is the tool. And this is how the teachers met over the summer in, their steering committees to make those sorts of plans and decisions. So that's coming from other departments. And that's just one example. We have a huge push right now, like a lot of districts, for early college. And so the early college folks want to have their sort of dashboard, and we've talked about what they want, and now we're going to be putting it together. We have MTSS, so we have all these supports that are being put into place to support students. What does a dashboard look like, which is going to measure specifically these things? And that gets really helpful, because this is not a brag. This is a problem that a lot of urban districts face. When you have state support, and I'm using that term euphemistically, when the state's breathing down your neck and you have to report your progress back to the state, it's really nice not only to have a dashboard to track it, but it makes your reporting so much easier. You share the dashboard with them. And then they're like, wow, these folks are serious about it. They're tracking it. There are no surprises. So that's the sort of, those are some recent asks, but the asks come in all day, every day.
This is so great. And I feel like we probably could go all day talking about the questions that come up and how you guys respond quickly and swiftly to provide actionable data. Yeah. But I know we are running shorter on time. So I wanted to give everyone a chance maybe just to say some final comments, thoughts. If you want to mention the teacher dashboard, we can, or we can. I feel like we've covered a lot. Yeah. But yeah, so let's just do some closing thoughts and we can wrap this up.
I'm going to close with this thought, and you can edit it out, Julia, if you want. So I'll say it again. I'm going to close with this thought. Too often in schools, we keep to ourselves. I don't get to talk to people from Oklahoma and districts down there, whatever. We encourage people to reach out and talk to us about how they're using the Data Hub. It's really just, it's great for us to be able to share and learn from each other. And we always get good ideas. Like, that's the thing that Sandino and I probably have learned. We know a small piece, and there are a lot of really smart people out there who know other pieces that we just don't know about. And it makes our lives, it makes us look good. So please reach out, and that would be our wish.
That's a great one.
Um,
Sandino, how about you?
Yes, to add to that, I think that here in Brockton specifically, just talking about my experience, is that people are actually very interested in the data. And not only are they interested in having the data, but they'll actually work with you to actually make the data very usable, user-friendly for them.
Mhm.
So they're actually, like, most of the actions, how could I put this? Let me think this.
Think of it
Actually-
this way, Sandino. If it were up to you, you'd say that's good enough. But when the teachers say, yeah, but I want this, and make it pretty, then you end up with a better product.
Yes. I think the way I would put
Now
it
you
is
have
actually,
to say it. Yeah.
it's actually like a nice marriage of, we're trying to build something, but because most of the times us as builders or designers, we just have a spec to go off of. We just check some boxes like, oh, this can do this, and they'll be able to do this. But when you're working with, someone who's involved in the process, they'll actually be like, okay, cool. Like, this dashboard needs to be this certain way, so we can use it every day and feel comfortable using it. So it's a nice marriage of, this is what we want, this is what it's able to do, let's work together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it reminds me, I used to teach some computer science, and I went on a field trip with my students, and one of the things the field trip presenters said was, if you want to get started on building and design, try building something that someone will try using. That person will try using it, and they'll have a lot of feedback, and you can tweak it. And so, you guys have worked with the educators in your district. I think it's really also awesome that Sandino is a graduate of the district, so he knows the student side too. And that gives this, the dashboards are the right data for people, and you guys have done the hard work of, what are important data sets to highlight or pieces of data to highlight. But then you've also gone the extra mile to make sure that the tool is, a good fit for the roles and the people in those roles. And that, I see it week after week, but you guys spend the time, collect the feedback from your team, and interact and talk to them, which I think is something that, other data teams can really benefit from, and being embedded and working with the educators who you're building these tools for. So yeah, I know we're on a ClassLink webinar here. I did nominate Sandino for a ClassLink Data Award because I thought, he's a really wonderful asset to the Brockton district, and is making a lot of great data available to a lot of great educators there. So thank you guys so much for joining us for this.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you both for all that you're doing for kids and for students, and modeling for other districts today, like how they can also use data in a really actionable and informed way. I just really appreciate it. So this was fantastic to hear from you, and I'm sure we will be talking to you again soon. And thanks everyone for tuning in.